Spirit Airlines is in trouble after the JetBlue deal was grounded. The ultra-low-cost carrier has a big pile of debt, and it has to ground 10% of its fleet in 2024. First of all, it's not a low-cost airline. It's a crappy airline that gets you with fees left and right. Now, I know that there are certain advantages with Spirit if you fly I guess like a certain level of frequency. If you have to constantly travel for work, I think there's like a built-in.
I will never fly on Spirit ever, 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 ever again.
Neither will I.
Ever again. In fact, if it's the only direct flight to someplace that I want to go, I ain't going. Seriously. Like I will not fly that airline again. Not after the whole Cleveland fiasco.
A federal judge blocked low-cost carrier JetBlue's $3.8 billion takeover of ultra-low-cost carrier Spirit. It's like they didn't even call it they didn't even say it's an airline. Spirit Airlines this week, putting the smaller airline's future in jeopardy. Probably not a bad thing. The Justice Department sued to stop the merger last month, arguing that the deal would lead to less competition and higher prices. Well, obviously, in his 100-page ruling on Tuesday,
late on that.
Judge William Young agreed the deal would be anti-competitive. JetBlue were permitted to gobble up Spirit. At least as proposed, it would eliminate one of the airline industry's few primary competitors that provides unique innovation and price discipline. But it's a shitty airline.
You got to bring your own cushion, or you're sitting on a bench.
And the seats are very tight.
Well, no, but seriously, they're hard. It's like you're sitting on a wood bench with a piece of fabric over it. So like literally Jason actually bought a cushion for when he was going back and forth to Asheville.
It would further consolidate an oligopoly by immediately doubling JetBlue's stakeholder size in the industry. Worse yet, the merger would likely incentivize JetBlue further to abandon its roots as a maverick low-cost carrier.
I agree with that.
That may be true to that. Yeah, that I would agree with. But to even defend Spirit Airlines and its activity and what it does, remember the whole goal of a merger with JetBlue taking on Spirit is to expand their hubs and expand their reach and hence expand their stock value and hence expand the value of their shareholders. And that's it. There's nothing noble about what they're doing. They're not trying to make air travel safer
and here's
or
the thing,
better.
Like, and I'm not going to take up a collection for Spirit either, because the bottom line is if you can't run a successful business, why do you get to be in business? If you can't run a successful business, why should you get to stay in business?
But this also speaks to the bigger problem here, which is, of course, we have a system that is designed to only adhere to shareholders. And if COVID taught us anything, if there was an industry that basically shit on people and only cared about their shareholders, it was the airline industry. And the way that they got bought out and were benefited, it's ridiculous. Spirit Airlines has indicated that it will average 26 grounded planes in 2024 to replace the Pratt and Whitney engines of many of its Airbus jets because of a manufacturing defect. You see, when they say it's a defect, I'm sorry, but I'm more or less convinced that this is basically cutting corners for the purpose of increasing profit.
Well, of course it is.
Starting with 13 in January, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's an additional burden on an already big pile of losses for the airline whose ticker symbol is SAVE. But what's the point of saving if traveling becomes such a burden? Isn't traveling supposed to be comfortable?
Traveling hasn't been comfortable for me since the 80s. So I don't know.
When they could smoke on the plane?
That actually was kind of gross. It was like flying in a giant smoke tube.
Sure.
And the best was when you went on, even when they stopped it on domestic flights, but you could still smoke on international. And they have like the smoking section on a plane, as if you can really segregate out a smoking section on a plane. Like it's not going to somehow get to everyone else in the same tube.
See, now here's the one more important point about this story that is important to note. JetBlue has also not turned a profit since 2019. How is that possible? How do you not turn a profit? But given its size and its losses are more manageable, the bigger airline still has 131 Airbus aircraft on order, split between 76 A220 and 355 A3. Again, this is all aviation, not something that most people follow.
Here's what's interesting. I'm looking at the fact that the current and outgoing CEO is Robert Hayes. Anybody find that entertaining? I do.
Surely you can't be serious.
Yes, I'm serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Has to reassess JetBlue's flight path forward. And of course, like I said, I think this had a lot to do with where the different hubs that might have been made available to JetBlue, because JetBlue is as good an airline as JetBlue is overall. It's a very regional airline. It's not something that you're going to find in every place. But as you can see, This is the big thing right here. It's about the stock price. And right now, as we can see, plummeting all the way down.
It's because they suck.
They do.
So they deserve to do that. They deserve to plummet. Good businesses can succeed and bad businesses should fail if they're bad businesses. I don't feel bad for them at all.
When you look at the timeline of the JetBlue-Spirit merger, the only thing that really matters here is October 2022. Spirit shareholders vote to approve the JetBlue offer. And why does that matter? Because it's not a matter of what's good for it's not good for what's for the people. That doesn't matter. It matters for the people that sit on the corporate boards, which is not democracy, as you don't like my music.
Well, and it's not like they care about employees either. They don't care about anybody. They just care about the stock prices. But I mean, that's just, par for the course.
Thankfully, it didn't happen. I do think that one of the more unique developments in this particular election cycle is going to be the fact that we do have a incumbent president that is almost to a fault a lame duck, which is hard to believe because that rarely happens. But that does provide an opportunity to potentially try to do some nice things for the people. I'm not holding my breath, but one can only hope. And the fact that Spirit and JetBlue were not able to merge, I still think had a lot to do with the fact that these airlines, there's been a lot of problems, a lot of structural problems with these planes.
Yeah, I agree. I don't ever get to travel first class, but I would if I could. I mean, I can't, so I don't. But yeah, I agree. I would definitely try. I once got a bump years ago. We got a bump, and it was good because it was a flight from Hawaii, and so it was a long flight.
Sounds great.
We got. I mean, seriously, we got. This was back when you could get lucky and get this was back in the 90s. Okay, so
what a great movie.
Oh.
That's kind of how it is.
I can't hear Staying Alive without that scene in my head. I can't with the guy with the knife in his back. I can't. There's so many things.
When Robert Stack walks into the airport and starts it. Now, apparently, again, this is before a lot of our time, but when Jen was a little lady, you actually, what was actually not made illegal until the early 80s was you couldn't be a religious solicitor in the airport.
Right. You were allowed to be. Well, okay. So when I was growing up, the Hare Krishnas were known for hanging out outside the airport and asking for donations and all stuff. And so, yes, then there was this law made where you couldn't solicit religious donations. But that movie, because we did have that. And yet my husband, yes, still gave a $5 bill to a covert Hare Krishna, even after that law passed. This guy goes to Jason. Jason's such a tool. So he goes to Jason, he's like, psst. And Jason actually walks over to this guy, and he's dressed normally because they can't dress like Hare Krishnas anymore. They have to dress normally. They're wearing caps because they have the ponytail thing. So Jason goes over to this guy, and he goes, "Here, would you like to buy this book?" And Jason just, of course, is my husband will do anything to avoid any sort of confrontation. The path of least resistance is to say, sure, hands the guy $5 and brings it back. And he's like, hey, I just got this book. And I'm like, that was a Hare Krishna. He's like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, yes, it was a Hare Krishna. Sure enough, we look at the book and it's the righteous path kind of stuff. It was totally but so they're still there. They're just plain clothes. They're plain clothes Hare Krishnas.
Jews for Jesus?
Jews for Jesus don't hang out at the airport. We get a lot of Moonies.
Reverend Moon?
We get a lot of Moonies. They're usually the ones off the highway with the flowers.
Ah. Okay. Well, now you know what to look for.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.